welcome to the A to Z Sports Big Orange Podcast. I am Charlie Burris. With me, as always, is Zach Reagan. Wherever you listen throughout the world, we thank you very much for listening to us. Zach and I talk everything Vols every week here on the Big Orange Podcast. If you want to listen to that on the reg, go over to the A to Z Sports Podcast Network feed on Apple and Spotify. When you get there, rate, review, but you got to subscribe, because if you do subscribe, you won't miss our shows when we drop them on Mondays. Speaking of Mondays, it is one right now at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, and that means that we are live on YouTube. A to Z Sports Tennessee Vols is where you'll find us. Go subscribe there. We crossed over the 2,000 subscriber mark. Let's go. Happy to see it. Now we just got to get to 3,000, then 4, then 5, then 6. So go subscribe. Hit the notification bell, too, because if you do that, you'll be notified when we go live, and you can come hang out, be a part of the show. It's always a ton of fun. At Charlie_Burris, at Zach TNT, at A to Z Sports, Facebook.com/A to Z Sports Nashville, A to Z Sports.com for everything that Zach writes on the internet. Go read it all. He's a content machine. All righty. First things first, it is Veterans Day, November 11th, and I'll just start off by saying thank you to all who serve and have served. I guess it would be have served as Veterans Day. We obviously owe a great debt to you as citizens of this great country. And so just a big old shout out to all of our veterans out there. I think there is probably a decent number that listen to this show, and we appreciate you. Now, with that said, Zach, how does Tennessee continue to win football games? This one by nearly 20 points, and yet we're in a panic. People are talking like Tennessee lost. Why do we keep doing this to ourselves? What is this team? Why? Why, Zach?
Yeah, I think football games are really hard to win, especially when you got a lot of
it is
a lot of parity in the sport. But you know, I was watching the Chiefs and the Broncos play yesterday, and the Chiefs, miracle, right? They stay undefeated because of a blocked field goal. And I think at ESPN at one point today, they were kind of running down the close calls the Chiefs have had this year. And there's like 3 or 4 games that very easily could have gone the other way. For Kansas City, you got the best quarterback on the planet, great offensive mind in Andy Reid, and they can't score. And watching that Broncos game, you saw Mahomes miss a wide open Kelsey in the end zone from like 10 yards out. He missed a deep shot down the field to a wide open receiver, just overthrew him a little bit. And in the post-game press conference, he's like, yeah, it's just a little off, just a little bit off. It's like, that's the same thing we've been hearing from Tennessee all season. Not comparing Tennessee to the Chiefs or anything like that, but they're following the same script this entire season. But if you keep winning, people aren't really going to worry how you won those games when you get to the end of the season.
Nico Iamaleava is Patrick Mahomes. Quote that. Zach Reagan said it, not me. He said it. No.
I mean, it's made some Mahomes-like throws, right? Like that throw to Miles Kitselman in the back of the end zone against Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
That was an impressive play. If Mahomes makes that play, Chris Collinsworth's falling out of the booth and running around the stadium doing the victory lap.
Oh man, Chris Collinsworth. I just hope to one day love something as much as he loves Patrick Mahomes. Maybe one day. But of course, on tonight's show, on the Big Orange Podcast, we will be talking all about that Mississippi State game first, then previewing the Georgia game. A big part of that, it's going to be about Nico, the injury, everything that's happening. Speaking of Nico, that's what everybody wants to know about. There were updates today from Josh Heupel at his press conference, if that's what you want to call them, whatever he gave there.
But we're going to
exactly. But we're going to discuss all of that. Give our take on the Georgia game, our preview, our prediction, and then maybe throw in a little bit of basketball, because the basketball team went to Louisville, Kentucky, and just smacked around the Cardinals, man. 22-point win there for Barnes and the boys. Very nice showing. And so we'll mention that also. And we'll talk about it all right after I tell you about the good folks at Farm Bureau Health Plans. Farm Bureau has been serving Tennesseans for over 75 years. Much has changed in Tennessee over the years, but some has stayed the same. Farm Bureau As always, valued personal relationships, especially when it comes to good health and good service. Plan on Farm Bureau Health Plans for health, dental, and vision. For better coverage, better rates, and better service, go to fbhp.com/ATOZ or walk into one of their 200 plus locations across the state. That is fbhp.com/ATOZ. Farm Bureau Health Plans. Go get yourself a health plan. Support them because they support us. All righty, Zach. Tennessee 33, Mississippi State 14 was your score in Knoxville on Saturday. And if you look at that, I would say this game, all things considered, front to back, played out about the way that we predicted. I think we probably both said Tennessee would score maybe an additional touchdown or two. But on the whole, Tennessee's defense holds them to 14 like they've held every other team in America at this point. And then the offense put a few more on the board because Mississippi State's defense is absolutely abysmal. And yet, everybody is talking about Nico. But before we get to that, your quick thoughts on what we saw against Mississippi State, including Nico's performance.
Yeah, I think you could say it looked like they were on their way to maybe a blowout win, especially after Nico hit that. He hits the touchdown to Swerve White on the opening drive of the game, which I believe was a fourth down play when he threw that. It was a 34-yard touchdown to open up the scoring. He hit a big one to Dante Thornton. It looked like Tennessee was just in the game that we finally were waiting on them to put together offensively. You get the Nico injury coming out of halftime. Obviously, that changes the plans a little bit. Still did a really good job of operating the offense in the second half with Gaston Moore. But you take all that away and you just look at the final score of this game, 33-14. Nationally, the narrative's a little bit of like, well, Tennessee's still not quite there yet. Yet we've seen teams play Mississippi State that are top 10, top 15, top 5 teams. Texas, beat them, I think 35-13. It was a very similar game. Total yardage was similar. Yardage given up was similar. Georgia, only beat Mississippi State by 10. And that Texas game was in Austin too, by the way. So it's not even the home and away thing. Georgia only beats them by 10, 41-31. They give up a lot of points, more points than Tennessee did. Played them close. I know Mississippi State's record's not good, but I think if you give Jeff Lebby some time, there's some good things happening at that program. It's going to take a little while, right? Because that program, you referenced it last week, just went through a lot with Mike Leach passing, and you promote Zach Arnett, and he's not the guy. Sets the program back a little bit. Lebby's got his work cut out for him, and it's not quite the brand that Tennessee is. It's not the same athletic director situation that Tennessee had. So it's going to take him a little bit of time to rebuild that, to even dream about getting close to what Josh Heupel's built at Tennessee. But they're not just going to roll over, right? Like, they play hard, they play tough. They've played a lot of teams tough this year. So I think it's, one of those games where you just got to find a way to win and not let it be a trap game when it's nestled in between this really dynamic atmosphere against Kentucky and then this huge road game against Georgia. It is that classic trap game. The schedule had a couple of those. Arkansas, obviously we saw how that worked out. They went in there and they played really well. They did what they were supposed to do. You win by 19 points. You would have won by more if your quarterback doesn't get hurt, if your top receiver doesn't get hurt. Dylan Sampson leaves the game because of injury for a little bit, has to come back. He cost them a touchdown probably after he fumbled. I know they got the ball right back, and they don't score at the goal line because you go with the true freshman over Sampson in that moment. Maybe you leave Sampson in there. He's got a nose for the end zone. He scores there. So, again, there's just these little things where you're really, really close to a blowout win. It just didn't all come together. But end of the day, it's a win. You're 8-1. You're in a really good place going into Georgia. And, again, like we mentioned last week and the previous week, you're in these games where you're having to battle. They're not just easy, walk in the park, it's over by halftime. You've really had to battle throughout these games, and I think that experience is really going to help during this stretch run, starting with this game against Georgia.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right about it yet again being so close to exactly what you want it to be. And injuries are one thing. I do think if Nico finishes this game out, you probably hit that 40 mark at a minimum. And Sampson, stop coughing up the ball, man. Because otherwise, obviously, he's putting up huge numbers. Another touchdown, another, what was this one? 149 on the ground for Sampson in this one. That second half, I mean, just a dog performance when essentially they're having to just lean on him because Gaston Moore is in the game. And let's see if Gaston Moore, an admirable performance where he came in and did what he had to do. I like that he just kind of goes for it. He's just chucking it downfield, getting pass interference calls. They moved the ball that way, legitimately. If he was an NFL quarterback, they would have moved the ball in a very serious way because of some of the throws he made. And so I think all the way around, fine performance, and you just really turn to the storylines afterwards as to what I really take away from it. The way that the team looks right now, with injuries included, how does that stack up against Georgia? I have a hard time going in and sifting through everything that happened against Mississippi State, even for the defense, because a lot of people talked about the defense afterwards. They got gashed on the ground yet again. Happened against Kentucky, happened against Mississippi State. Is it going to happen against Georgia? We'll see. I think against Mississippi State, some of it was the fact that they spread you out the way that Tennessee does. Tennessee, it looked really similar to the way that Tennessee gashes teams on the ground. And some of those were probably pretty egregious where the defense probably should have stopped them. But on the whole, you hold them to 14 points. What does it really matter? They're kind of I saw a stat today. Tennessee's defense is the exact inverse of the Tennessee Titans. The Tennessee Titans right now, did you see this, Zach? They're something like close to the number one defense in the NFL by yards allowed, and they are 3 from the bottom in points given up.
But that's short fields from the Levis interceptions.
Exactly.
I'm sure
It means Levis is turning the ball over on like every possession is what it means.
On the 10.
Mason Rudolph or whoever.
Yeah.
And then, Tennessee's defense, they give up a chunk of yards. Against Mississippi State, it ultimately wasn't that much, but they did get gashed on the ground, and then they only give up 14 points. Obviously, the streak now, they've held every team this entire season under 20 points, which is absolutely insane. I think the stat that people have been seeing that is encouraging is that the last SEC teams to do that, maybe the last like 3 or 4 of them, all won a national championship. So
it's funny if you go look at Georgia's schedule and the teams that they've played, that Tennessee's played. Mississippi State, we mentioned 31 points is what Georgia gave up. Tennessee gave up 14. Alabama, I mean, what they give up to Alabama, 41, whatever the score of that game was. Yep. Tennessee gave up 17. Florida, I think Tennessee has the edge by a few points in the Florida game. I think Georgia got them on the Kentucky game by a few points. But on the whole, Tennessee's defense has been doing better, keeping their opponent, fewer points allowed than Georgia against the same opponents. Yes. I think that's pretty telling.
It's telling on 2 fronts on how good Tennessee's defense is, especially when it comes down. They get crunched down to the red zone area. They are just elite there. Even in these games where they've given up yards on the ground, they have been elite in the red zone.
And that's kind of been Tim Banks' philosophy at times.
Yeah, don't break.
Dating back to his first season at Tennessee. And they've done a much better job this year. Obviously, they've kept them from being able to get into the red zone in many of those instances because of turnovers or just really good play from your defensive line and enforcing some early 3 and outs. But typically they get down in the red zone. They really bow up and they hold teams to field goals or turnover on downs. We've seen a few times as well. It seems like they're just like, they're not going to get beat over the top, which we see a lot of teams do this. They're willing to, they want to stop it, right? Like, they're playing to stop you and get the ball back as quickly as possible, but they're willing to give up a few of those short passes and they get down inside 20 and they feel like they have the advantage then on defense.
And clearly they do, in a real way. But I was going to say it speaks to how good Tennessee's defense has been and how not good Georgia's defense has been, at least compared to years past where they were just some of the best college football defenses we've ever seen in this sport. They are not that this year. They simply aren't. You saw against Ole Miss, they got pushed around. The secondary looked lost at times. They do have Malachi Starks. I mean, he's one of the best DBs in America, but
Mm-hmm.
they're gettable, completely gettable, and we're going to talk about that here in just a little bit. But to finish out the stuff with the Mississippi State game, I think all things considered, when you factor in all the injuries and everything, you're not going to hear any real complaints out of me about this game. I just can't muster. You're 8-1, and you're right here for a playoff shot, and Mississippi State. I mean, you beat Mississippi State like with double digits running away. It's not like they played you extremely close and this was, oh my gosh, we should have looked better than this. Yeah, maybe you should have looked a little better, but quarterback's out with injury. Dante Thornton's out, and it's your Andre Karich goes out for a time. Spraggins goes out on the offensive line, and we don't really know the status of either of those guys right now, by the way. And nobody's really talking about that.
Jackson Lampley did a good job kind of bouncing back and forth.
He did.
Left guard and right guard at times against Mississippi State.
He definitely did. And like I said, nobody's really talking about that. Probably not nearly as much as they should be.
Well, I think that the Nico injury just overshadowed everything. And I mean,
Yes.
I know we'll get to that in a minute, but the post-game press conference Saturday night, I don't think anyone asked about Dante Thornton, who's like the team's best wide receiver this season, and went out. And it's like, oh, completely forgot about that guy. It was just all in on Nico, which I get. That's pretty important guy and pretty important part of your offense. But it did seem like he put blinders on to some of those other injuries.
I think we could say, as far as Thornton goes, we have it on decent authority that he's probably going to be fine.
Yeah,
I'll put it that
which
way.
Is good. He played well.
Yeah.
He's been playing well, period, and really played well against Mississippi State before that injury.
I think he's your best guy he's your best wideout right now. You need him badly.
No, I will say Squirrel. It looked like Squirrel White seemed to play a lot better. Saturday night he's had a few. He's been up and down at times this season. He's made some plays. I think he leads the team in receptions. Him or Brew McCoy won there at the top for Tennessee. I thought he played well. I thought, one of the most encouraging signs from that Mississippi State game to me was right before halftime. When you go down there, you get the ball back with, what was it, like 20 seconds or something left to play and 2 timeouts, and they go down the field. I mean, Nico's last pass before he exited the game at halftime was a completion to Squirrel White that got them in field goal range, and it was a nice completion, being able to find him on the field and quickly complete that and get that field goal off, just still 3 points that way, right? Like you get a couple of points back there after giving up some there before the half. Stuff like that is what we saw Tennessee do in 2022. Like, they maximized their opportunities, and we haven't seen that as much the last season and a half. So in that moment, I know that doesn't seem like a big deal. I just thought it was a really good sign that they just seemed confident in that. In 2022, in that situation, it's like they're going to get points. Like, they're going to score here. Like, they left too much time. It's been a little while since I've felt that way when they've been in those situations. So I thought that was really good to see.
It really was. And now I think we do have to talk about Nico and the injury and everything going on there. To address the comments, we have a bunch of comments already. We appreciate everybody watching, tuning in, commenting. There's a lot of people talking about the Georgia game already. We will get to your comments, the questions that you're asking. We just got to get all of this stuff out of the way up front. I will say of Leslie right here, I feel as if Sampson, if he was on another team, they would be giving him shouts for the Heisman Trophy. I can't say I disagree there, because I said this to Crompton on Saturday. During the ESPN broadcast, they are putting up graphics comparing his current season to Derrick Henry's Heisman year. That was a graphic that they put up during that game.
I think Leonard Fournette maybe as well.
Yeah, Leonard Fournette also. Zero Heisman talk for Dylan Sampson right now.
It's
none.
Wild.
It's absolutely crazy. I think I saw a graphic today where somebody had him 5th in the Heisman rankings, but then I saw on threes, not in the top 10. Not in the top 10. I mean, what are we doing? Yeah, that's great for Ashton Genty, but he plays in the freaking Mountain West. Yeah. Oh, he put up 200 yards and 3 touchdowns against Nevada. No offense. I mean, that's great against anybody. 200 yards and 3 touchdowns is an incredible football game, but it's Nevada.
And let's not forget that Dylan Sampson didn't play in the second half of like the first 3 games of the season.
Yeah, that's true. Yes, it's absolutely crazy. And just like that second half, like he's your guy.
Mm-hmm.
Nico being out is not great, but at the end of the day, this team goes the way that Dylan Sampson goes. Period. Case in point. That's kind of the end of that conversation, because if he's running the ball well, you're going to be able to pass the ball much more easily. And he's a dog. He's team leader. He's everywhere for you. He gets injured and he comes back in and he scores a touchdown. I mean, it's just crazy how awesome that kid has been this season. And he's just not getting the recognition that he deserves outside of some of the national media members that are actually tuned into what Tennessee does. And so many of them are, not only are they not, but they're genuinely just biased against Tennessee. They hate Tennessee. Tennessee fans, frankly, don't hate the national media enough. I think after all of these years,
it's actually got worse since Tennessee's been good. It feels like there's a whole conversation there to be had that we could take up a lot of time with, but it's been real frustrating, I think, for a lot of fans over the last week to see Penn State get propped up with no wins against ranked opponents. And Tennessee just getting, nitpicked over this loss to Arkansas, which really is not that bad of a loss. I don't think that loss is that bad. It's a road game against an opponent that's played some teams tough that could easily be 7-2. Arkansas could have easily beat at Texas A&M and Oklahoma State and be 7-2 right now. And yet, Alabama's loss to Vanderbilt is just ignored. I know Vanderbilt's playing well, but they lost to Georgia State. And Ole Miss
Vanderbilt got run off the field by South Carolina on Saturday. Completely overmatched.
And Ole Miss, losing to Kentucky, that was a real bad loss. That was it was on the road, just like Tennessee's was, but it was a noon game at Kentucky, not exactly a daunting environment. And it's just like, oh, well, no, Ole Miss, they're going to be in the playoff if they win out. And Tennessee loses to Georgia. It's like, oh, that Arkansas loss, man, that's tough to get past. I don't get the logic in it at all. And, Tennessee, they were one play away from winning that game against Arkansas. It didn't go their way. If Nico checks that ball down to Dylan Sampson on third down at the end of that game, I mean, he walks into the end zone, game over. Yeah. You were that close to getting out of there with a win. So that loss, regardless, don't let anyone talk you into that being this awful, terrible loss. It's not any worse than the other losses we've seen from some of the top teams in the playoff rankings. It's been pretty frustrating, but win out, and I guess you don't have to worry about that. You can control your own destiny if you go beat Georgia and take care of business against Vanderbilt. They really won't be able to keep Tennessee out at that point.
And what you're going up against going forward, let's say that you do drop this game against Georgia, is guys like Bud Elliott, 247. He posted today a playoff bracket without Tennessee in it. Tennessee is number 4 in the coaches poll. Number 4. And this guy says Tennessee's not in the top 12 teams in college football. His rationale, somebody asked, what's the justification for having Notre Dame in over Tennessee? I wanted to make sure that I didn't misquote him here. If you're punishing Tennessee for the loss to Arkansas, then shouldn't you punish Notre Dame for having a far worse loss? And he says Tennessee does not have a better win. Tennessee does not have a better win than Notre Dame. And Bud Elliott, mind you, his number 12 team in his bracket, Alabama. Tennessee beat a team that's in his bracket. Tennessee doesn't have a better win than Notre Dame. I'm sorry. What are we talking about here? This is who you're going up against. These dummies.
It's idiotic. Some of the college football media and coverage has just devolved to a point where it's hard to tell what's satire and what's
truly
not.
Do they do it? Are they just doing it for the engagement?
I think so. I think over the last 10 years, Tennessee fans, they're not going to let you get away with it. Like, they're going to call you out. And I think some of these media people have just figured out, like, hey, whatever. I don't care what they say about me online. I'll get the engagement and I'll get what I want out of this by just being absurd and throwing some shade at Tennessee. And it works. To their credit, it works, because I see it and I'm like, how can someone truly be this dumb? Like, is it me? Is it us? I don't
get it. Am I taking
it.
crazy pills? Like, what are we doing here? But that's what you're going up against. And so, to Richard Patton's point here, his comment, he says, it's simple. Win and we are in. Go Vols. That really is. That's a simple fact. You got to beat the Georgia Bulldogs and nobody can say a thing to you. So how can they do that? Well, I think a big factor might be Nico Iamaleava playing in this game. And so let's talk about his status with the Tennessee football team. I got let's see if I can get the clip up here. I had it. I just got to get back. Got it saved on my Twitter, and I'll play Josh Heupel's comments today. Josh Heupel did his normal Monday press conference that he does during game weeks. And the very first question that he got was about Nico. And this is what he had to say today.
Yeah, he was with us today. Had a really good day. Feel like he'll be in great shape for Saturday. But you guys can monitor the whatever the report is that comes out on Wednesday and track it through the week. But certainly feel like he'll be in a good spot.
Is there any value in giving Gaston any more reps or reps with the ones in case he is needed Saturday?
Yeah, Gaston gets reps throughout the course of practice every day, every week. And that's why he went out and played the way that he did, too.
I love this.
Yeah, I thought that was a great follow. It was Adam Sparks there from the Knoxville News.
It was, yeah.
With the follow-up question. I thought it was a great follow-up question because he gave you about what he gave you on Saturday night with the Nico question. And Adam's follow-up there, it's like, can you maybe get Heupel to slip up and be like, yeah, he's going to get some extra reps this week. But Heupel's like, nah, checkmate. Like, I've got you on this. I'm not going to give you anything.
He said that's a great point that he didn't get got by Sparks. But he was with us today. What does that mean?
Well, I will say, Chris Lowe is obviously very close to the Tennessee program, went to Tennessee. He reported today that the main practices for Tennessee, like when they really get into it, start tomorrow, Tuesday, is what ESPN.com, Chris Lowe, you can go read it. That's what he said. So today was more meetings and team activities. What I don't know what that. I mean, obviously meetings, you're in the room, you're watching film, you're going with your position group meetings and offense, defense, all that. As far as team activities, I mean, that could be anything. It could be a walkthrough type deal. It could be conditioning. It could be, individual stuff. I mean, who knows what that really means. But Heupel definitely, he knew how he was going to answer that question going into that press conference today. He had that one rehearsed and ready to fire off as soon as possible. And, if this was the NFL, you would probably hear different follow-ups, right? Like if Paul Kaharski was a Tennessee Vols beat writer, he's probably grilling Heupel on what exactly the injury was. If he probably point blank asked, because the speculation is head injury, right? ESPN called it.
They probably should have done that anyway today, but
yeah, I mean that's typically how that would go. But I think the direct question would be asked: is Nico in the concussion protocol? Now, Heupel probably is not going to answer that. He's probably going to skirt around it like he did, that question. But I was kind of surprised that it wasn't asked. But to get to that point, Chris Lowe did report. We do know, based on his sources, that Nico was removed from the game with concussion-like symptoms, right? So that doesn't mean he has a concussion, but there was concern. That's the extent of what we really know for sure.
And I want to just so he said, Heupel said he was with us today, and then right out, how exactly did he word this?
He was with us today. Had a really good day. Feel like he'll be in great shape for Saturday.
Feel like he'll be in great shape for Saturday. Had a really good day. That follow up is interesting. I feel like he didn't have to say that. He could have just said he was with us today. Had a great day, and
we could have
left it there.
We've heard him say, honestly, this is more information than he's given in the past, like with Cooper Mays and some other guys that have been hurt. Because typically we'll see where he's at on the back end of the week, which, as we've talked about before, is after all of his media availability. He doesn't speak publicly again after Wednesdays. He used to talk on Thursdays. They've cut that out altogether. So the last time he speaks publicly at this point is Wednesday night during Vol calls, which I'm sure he will be asked during Vol calls. Once again, there'll probably be similar answers. He's got the SEC teleconference as well on Wednesday. But usually he pushes it off to then, kind of gives himself an out where he never really has to answer the question. That's kind of what I expected, honestly, today. So I was a little surprised that he did add that little bit of like, yeah, feel like he's going to be okay. Didn't fully commit to it, but gave a little more than usual.
Yeah, he genuinely did offer a few more words than I was expecting him to. And all of the context clues here have led me to a little bit of it's a conspiracy theory. Let's be 100% clear. This is full-blown speculation. I have no source, nothing here to back any of this up. Everybody's been hearing concussion protocol. Chris Lowe is saying it. Everybody that I've seen is saying that was the case. I wonder, Nico took the hits that ESPN played as these are the suspected hits where this happened. He came back in the game, and what you were just talking about set you up for that field goal as you went out. He came back in and threw the football and looked cogent.
I went back and watched that entire sequence too, and there was no sign. Like even knowing it's like, okay, I'm looking for him to look kind of glossed over or spacey. There was no sign of that. He was locked in. Tempo, they're running tempo. It's hurry up right there in that instance. He's making the calls. He's doing everything that you would expect a quarterback to do when they're operating at a high level. No sign of anything like that. So that, yeah, it's
and because it's that mixed with how Heupel is acting here, I just wonder if the symptoms were just pretty mild, but they were there. Maybe he's like, oh, my head's hurting, a little dizzy, but I'm all right. I'm fine or whatever. And then he actually got checked out by a doctor and showed some kind of signs that you don't just fully have control over.
There's an independent. I don't know. Is college like the NFL? Is there like an independent person like on site that makes that decision where it's out of the team's hands? I know that there's supposed
I don't want to act like I know.
I think there's a spotter or maybe that's attached to the officiating crew or something that if they see something from up top, they're supposed to get them out of the game type of deal. That a long way to say a lot of times this is completely out of the team's control anyway, which, if you're messing with the head deal, it's the right thing to do.
Yeah. I would hope that if it was just the team doctor that he's going to be honest with you and go, hey, this kid looks like he has a concussion, even if it's just a mild one.
You have to be if you're in that position.
Exactly, because you don't want to be the guy that, you let him go out there and he ends up like, Tua.
Yeah, you can't do that.
There. So, and so I just wonder if it was kind of mild like that, and then they went, shut it down. And Heupel, I think in that situation, probably does the math and is like, honestly, we can win this game without this guy. Yeah. And not that it's Heupel's final.
Yeah, but it's not like that game was. It's not like that game was. Can you remember the score at halftime? What was it like?
You're up by 10, 17-7, I believe.
Yeah, so it's not like that game was out of, it wasn't over, right? Like you still had to go finish that game off. It was within reach for Mississippi State. You feel good about where you're at, but it's not like, oh, we've got a huge lead. We can sit Nico. We don't have to worry about it. If Nico's healthy, he's finishing probably every minute of that game. I don't think anybody comes in at the end if the score is the same.
Yeah. Oh, it's 20-7. Monty.
Yeah, so that's still. You're feeling good, but it's like, hey, Mississippi State put up 31 against Georgia. They can hit a couple of big plays real quick, and we go 3 and out, and all of a sudden we're in a game, and Gaston Moore's got to go win it for you.
Absolutely. So
it's a decision.
But having said all that, I do wonder if Heupel is being this nonchalant because genuinely the kid's going to be fine. Like he is going to play Saturday, and that's why he's being like this. But I think it could be that. Again, complete speculation. I am just saying, I'm just wondering it out loud. But with that being said, if you're not Josh Heupel, play these games. Do this. Put him on the injury report as questionable, probable. Who cares? Like that stinking Lane Kiffin last week put every player on his entire team on the injury report. He said
out an entire half, so I don't think anything would be like looked at as sketchy at this point. I would expect Nico to be on the injury report. I would be surprised if he's not. If he's not, that's great for Tennessee. but I would be surprised if he's not, just for what you're saying. You might as well lean into the gamesmanship a little bit. Bill Belichick did it for years. Back when the NFL had probable designations, I don't think the Patriots ever used it. Everyone was questionable. Brady's questionable every week.
Brady was always on there. I remember that.
Lower body, questionable.
I take advantage of every resource that you're given, and yeah, maybe the SEC gives you a slap on the wrist or something after the fact. I don't know what they would do, frankly, but like we said, Kiffin did it last week. Who cares? Do these things. Screw with Georgia, because who cares? Screw those guys. They're like, it's one of your biggest rivals, and you want to win this game and a playoffs on the line. Do what you got to do. And so that's where you're at with Nico. I don't know if you have a whole lot more as far as it goes with the Mississippi State game before we move on to Georgia, Zach. I'll throw it to you. Anything else before we move on?
I was happy to see Max Gilbert recover well and hit a couple of big kicks. Hit a lot. Was it like a 50-yarder or close to it?
51.
Yeah, so that was huge, because they clearly have a lot of trust in the kid. He's done well in practices. You know how it is. If you're a kicker, you go out there and you miss a kick or two, man, it's hard for that to not get in your head just a little bit. So knocking those down, especially before you go into Athens, where you're probably going to need a field goal or two at some point. Hopefully you're in the end zone and you're converting in the red zone, but chances are you're probably going to need him to kick a field goal or two at least. So you want him to have some confidence to build off of going into that game. And just the human element, man, that's tough to go through. You got 100,000 fans that are like, what is this guy doing? It's fourth down at the 20, 4th and 15. You're like, let's just go for it, because our kicker can't make a kick. That's tough, so it was nice to see him bounce back from that, for sure.
And he's just so young. I mean, you just want for that kid's psyche going forward, for him to just get it back. And he definitely did. I did love, I don't think it was the 51-yarder. I think it was, he kicked another one that was around 35 to 40. And he kicked it, and the second the ball went up and it was in the air, he turned around. He did like a fist pump from a movie. He was like, yeah, like that. And I was like, yes, I am hyped for this, man. Let's go.
He had some juice making those field goals. I can't blame him after the Kentucky game.
Yeah, you should be hyped, and that's good. Confidence builder and confidence building going into the, frankly, biggest game of the Josh Heupel era. I think that's where you're at. The playoffs on the line. You win this game, you are effectively in the playoff. I don't want to say you could lose to Vandy and still get in, but it's borderline. I think it'd be real close. And so let's talk about it. Tennessee plays Georgia, 7:30 p.m. It's a primetime game. College game day is going to be there. I mean, it's the whole kit and caboodle.
It could not be a new
for this
game.
one. No, never. We did find out next week. Thank God, UTEP, 1 o'clock. God bless. I will say I'm happy that I'll get to have the show with Crompton over early for that one. I can maybe watch those night games in peace. But yeah, let's talk and give our full preview and prediction for that one right after I tell you about the good folks at Zen Sports. It's never too early to start thinking about the big game in this November. Zen Sports, the new sportsbook in Tennessee, is launching a brand new sweepstakes. The big game sweepstakes. You could win a grand prize of 2 tickets to Super Bowl 59 in New Orleans, or $10,000 cash. But there is more. Zen Sports will also award 50 additional prizes that include 2 tickets to any Tennessee sporting event, or $100 cash. If you want in on the action, you can earn multiple entries every day by just betting on Zen Sports. For every bet you place, you will earn 1 entry, and for every dollar you bet, earn an additional entry. And if you like parlays, you earn double the entries on every parlay you place. So what are you waiting for? With Zen Sports, you'll automatically earn up to $100 with their no danger first wager. If your bet loses, you're reimbursed for the amount of your bet up to $100. So start betting with Zen Sports today. Zen Sports. Betting just got better. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-889-9789. No danger wager limited, plus 500 odds. Qualified terms and conditions apply. A qualifying wager for a wager entry must have minimum odds for any leg at that entry of minus 250 or worse. American odds for clarity. A wager of minus 251 does not qualify. Head to zensports.com/sweepstakes for all terms and conditions. Must be 21 or older in Tennessee to bet. Zen Sports, zensports.com. Go check them out. An awesome partner for us. Okay. So you come into this Georgia game for the second time in 2 years as the higher ranked team. Think about that however you want to. Last time it gave Georgia a bunch of motivation, and they kicked your butt up and down the field. They only won by 13, 14, 14. Yeah. But still, I think some of that was because it was raining and, whatever. I don't want to rehash all of that. No. But going into this one, it may be the case that you're ranked higher. Georgia's anywhere between, I've seen 8.5, I've seen 10.5, I saw 11.5 at one point. Favorite going in. In no way are you the favorite in this one. Not even close. Like, not close at all. Is that a function of Nico Iamaleava possibly not playing? Maybe. I would have guessed like 7-ish for this one. Just a touchdown with home field advantage. I feel like that feels right. But 8.5 to 12 is the line at this moment. And you have a real chance to win this game. And I make myself nervous saying that because I'm a Tennessee fan. But I really think you do. Georgia looked like garbage against Ole Miss. Let's be honest. Let's be completely 100% honest. Ole Miss kicked their butt straight up on both sides of the ball. I don't know. How are you feeling about this one, Zach?
Yeah, I'm all over the place on it. I really wish if you win that Arkansas game, man, you can go into this game with a lot less pressure, and it's not really an elimination game for Tennessee at that point. I don't think it is necessarily an elimination game as it is, but there's definitely some pressure because it gets taken out of your hands if you lose this game. I don't think the ranking things are going to come into play as much this time. Last time was a little different. I mean, both teams were undefeated, and they gave the edge to Tennessee shockingly, which played right into Kirby's hands, right? Like that was it was perfect. It was the week that it happened, and then you got to right then and play them, and that was tough. But in this instance, I mean, we've already talked about it. Tennessee's not getting a lot of love from the national media. They're almost where they're at because they have to be. They're a one-loss SEC team. You can only put them so low. Georgia's got 2 losses. I mean, they can't really – there's not a strong argument for we should be a top 5 team at this point. You've lost twice. You've lost Alabama. You've lost Ole Miss. You are what your record says you are type deal. So I don't think that's the focus. In fact, I think really this Georgia team, these players, they've never been in this situation. They don't know what 2 losses is like unless they're on that 2020 team, and that was an odd year for everyone in the COVID year. Does it have a little bit of like, I don't know if we have, as much to play for in this sense, maybe because, we got to win to get in the playoff, but are we good enough? I don't know. There's weird things that can do with your psyche. So there's a lot at play there with motivation tactics and where the mindsets are. At the end of the day, it's a Kirby Smart coach team. You're going up against a rival. Kirby hasn't lost to Tennessee since 2016. He does not want to lose this game, right? Like it eliminates Georgia for sure. Then you've got a loss to Josh Heupel. That's huge for Tennessee in recruiting when they're going up against a lot of the same players Georgia's going up against. It's just a lot of reasons that Kirby's going to have his team ready to go in this one, and I think Tennessee will be ready to go as well. I think these teams are both good, right? Like they're both good teams. They're not shown that they've been elite yet, neither one of them, but they're both good teams that can win. They can probably beat any other team in the country when they're playing at their best. Which team plays at their best on Saturday night? I think that's basically what it comes down to. Who executes the cleanest? Who avoids mistakes? Who avoids penalties? Does Carson Beck play the game of his life? Like I assume he will, just because it's Tennessee. Those are the things that are going to determine this game. And, unfortunately, objectively, you look at it and it's like, well, the edge has got to go to Georgia just because the game is in Athens, right? Like the crowd's going to be on their side. You've had trouble on the road already this season where you went into these environments, especially at Arkansas. That doesn't bode well for cutting down on penalties, which has continued to be an issue throughout the season for Tennessee. It's been a little better. It wasn't as bad against Mississippi State, but there's still these dumb penalties that just keep happening and killing drives. Like, some of it's out of Tennessee's control. Like Lance Hurd pulling the ball carrier across the first down line. Like you don't see that called very often, but whatever, you got to play cleaner than that. Yeah, it's just one of those things where Tennessee hasn't really shown consistently that they can go in these environments and play at a high level, and it's really hard to trust that they will until I see them actually do it for a full 4 quarters. And it's going to be a wild environment. I think your best case scenario is you can, just strike early, create a turnover. Somebody in the comments mentioned like they could see a Boo Carter pitch 6 happening. That would be huge, especially they mentioned there in the fourth quarter. You can do that in the first quarter. I mean, that immediately takes a little bit of the air out of the stadium. Or if you hit a big play on offense right off the bat, I think you've got to do something like that to kind of get the crowd out of this a little bit early. If you can do that, then the game kind of settled. Tennessee can kind of play their game. They can kind of dictate where the game goes from there. You've got to, whichever team kind of dictates how this game is played, I feel like is going to be the team that wins the game.
In years past, I've had the take, and it's been true, you just have to play the game of your life and put everything together all in that one moment, and then Tennessee could win this one. I don't think you have to do that in this game. You do have to play really well, and you have to play clean, to your point. But that's definitely something that's different about this matchup with Georgia. You look at that game against Ole Miss, they got manhandled. Case in point, and I think you're a very similar team to Ole Miss in terms of just build. They, at this point, I mean, they just have a much older, more experienced, probably pound for pound better quarterback than you do. As much as Jackson Dart and his entire attitude kind of bugs me, but whatever. He probably right now is just playing in the SEC. He's playing better than Nico. But on the whole, I think they're a pretty similar team to you. They just have a powerful defensive line. I think you could argue Tennessee's defensive line is better than theirs. And you have a really nice secondary that has way more athleticism than it has in years past. And Carson Beck looks lost out there. Now, he's playing at home again, and he's better at home. And there is that possibility that something clicks and he gets it all back. But I don't know has he even had a game like that? I went back and looked. That Texas game, he didn't even play that well in that Texas game. They ran him off the field. But I think a big function of that was Georgia's defense. And I just wonder if Tennessee genuinely has just as many paths to victory in this game as Georgia does. And I don't know if I would say more, but it just feels like it's a legit 50-50-ish kind of thing. And maybe the 10-point spread is the assumption that Nico's not going to play. I think my personal gut feeling is that he is. I just feel like if he has the ability at all, it's going to be go time for him. But even if he doesn't, if Gaston Moore plays, Dylan Sampson's your guy. Dylan Sampson's going to be the complete difference maker, and I think Gaston Moore can make passes that could possibly help free up Dylan Sampson a little bit. And worst case scenario, he can chuck up a 50-yard ball and maybe get a pass interference call.
3 in 1 quarter.
Yes, clearly he is a savant when it comes to that. I don't know. Is that the ideal situation? No, because I think he does not offer anywhere close to what Nico can with his legs, and that is a big difference maker. You saw the power that had late in that Alabama game. I mean, there were a couple of plays that were game changers with Nico's legs against Alabama.
Yeah. And he used them some against Mississippi State before he went out, too.
He did. Yes. It's big. And so you really want Nico in this one for sure. And at the top end of his ability, I mean, he's making NFL throws. He doesn't do it super consistently right now, but he absolutely can. And so if Nico could play, it's at worst a 50-50 to me in this one. That said, you have only seen Josh Heupel and his team play a complete butt-kicking game on the road one time. It was that LSU game in 22. They ran him off the field. That was awesome. Outside of that, especially at night, we simply haven't seen the man do it. And I don't mean to be a negative Nelly at all. Those are the facts on the ground. He hasn't done it. this offense hasn't traveled the way that you would want it to outside of that singular game at LSU in a big spot. Now they've gone to, Missouri in years past and put up like 60 points, but Missouri on its best day is nowhere close to what Death Valley is. And so but again, I don't think Tennessee has to have that groundbreaking, ultimate, you did everything you possibly could. I think you got to play how you played against Alabama. And you can win this game. I think you could. I think you can put up a very similar performance to that. And a huge piece of that is this defense. And that's why I'm waffling on this one. I don't know. Can Tennessee really do this, Zach? Do you think we're gonna beat Georgia?
I don't know.
I don't know, man.
I think these games are the type that they make you even more nervous because it is the most gettable that Georgia's been since 2016. When you beat them down there in Athens on a miracle. At that, I think you're going to have to stop the run. The run defense is going to have to be really good. If Georgia's running the ball well, that's just going to be a nightmare day because they're eating clock and they're controlling the ball and
they don't have a great run game.
Well, you don't until you do, right? And that's always the concern. It's like you haven't done it all year, and then you see teams,
injuries on the offensive line.
Yeah, end up doing it against Tennessee. If you can control the run game, dominate there, and just don't let the middle of the field become a weapon for Georgia, where Carson Beck is sitting there just finding guys wide open in the middle of the field. Now, I think Arian Carter is getting better in coverage. Made a really good play on a third down against Mississippi State.
Yes.
If you can do those two things, because I think you're going to be okay in the secondary. Jermod McCoy, Ricky Gibson, Boo Carter has really coming into his own. Those guys are playing well. So the deep passes don't really worry. In fact, throw it deep. I want to see Carson Beck make that play because I trust Tennessee's DBs at this point to make it tough on them. Don't give up huge runs in the run game, and don't let you can't be like death by 1,000 paper cuts where they're just throwing 7-yard passes over the middle. That's frustrating. It creates these long drives. Defense gets tired. It's just not the way you're going to win this game. If you can do those two things, I think it all starts there. I think the rest of it will fall into place on defense.
Well, there's a number of factors there that make me encouraged. For one, Georgia has the second to worst rushing offense in the SEC at the moment. Just a little over 120 yards a game. And beyond that, their offensive line has injuries. This injury report on Wednesday is going to be big for both teams. I mean, Georgia has important players out. Like Tate Radledge has kind of been. Did he play in that game?
Yeah, he was banged up.
I thought.
He wasn't playing well the parts I saw of the game, but his ankle is still not 100%. He had a tightrope surgery that Cedric Tillman had, Brock Bowers has had over the past couple of years.
So you have some pretty serious injuries on that offensive line. The running game is already not good. The wide receivers, to your point of them playing to the middle of the field, just death by 1,000 paper cuts. I mean, Brock Bowers ain't walking through that door to go and catch all of those passes. They got guys for sure, plenty of talent from all the recruiting that Kirby's done, but they're not those game-breaking dudes like they've had. They don't have a Ryan Williams kind of guy like Alabama, and of course Ryan Williams got shut down against Tennessee. So combine all of that together and then throw in the factor that Carson Beck's the kid's lost his mind. He's turning. What has it been in the last 4 games or something? I saw 5 touchdowns to 9 interceptions, and then in this last one, at one play, didn't feel pressure at all and just got cracked, fumbled the ball, and another turnover that way too. The kid, I don't mean to be mean, the kid sucks right now. He might come in. He might come in and have the game of his life against Tennessee. We've seen him play well. The second half against Alabama, he was lights out. The ability's in there, but right now this kid sucks. So I don't know how else to put it. Have you watched this guy play? He stinks. I kind of, for my own sanity and not analyzing this game, I wish I could say something else because the Tennessee fan in me goes, oh, he's going to come in. He's going to throw for 400 yards. He's going to roast us because that's what happens in these games.
That's how I feel right now.
It's tough to fight that off.
Yeah.
But But this is not like past years. It's just not. And so where does that leave us as far as predicting this game? I don't know. I mean, that's the name on this account. He says, he or she says, Tennessee is the better team, and the body of work to this point proves that. Does that mean we win? I don't know. But we have been better in nearly every facet of the game over the last month. I think that's right, which is crazy. But and because Tennessee hasn't played perfect. They genuinely haven't. But I think Nico's been better than Beck. I think the defense for Tennessee has been borderline elite. And here you are. Georgia's a 10-point favorite, possibly because they think Nico's not going to play and the home environment and Josh Heupel's record on the road and whatever. But the path to victory is there for Tennessee. That's my entire point, is just the factors are lined up to where if Tennessee takes advantage, they can win this game. And it's not a far-flung, insane possibility. The main way that they could do that is this. Turnovers, and sacking back and just being in Beck's grill. 2 interceptions maybe. Give Nico a short field if he plays. Nico or Gaston, whoever's playing. Give him a short field. And then punch the ball in with Dylan Sampson. Get 14 free points. Something like that. Maybe a sack fumble. Whatever it is. And take advantage of those opportunities that you're given. That if that happens in the first half, you get an interception, short field, touchdown. I'm feeling good about this game. And obviously the defense in general has to play really well, but I think you help the offense there. And then, like in all of the games, throw up the bombs, hope they get caught, run with Dylan Sampson, let the kid dominate like he has all year. Hopefully he's back to healthier, because obviously he was injured and came out for a section of that game too. And add all that up, and the possibility for a win is there. I'll throw it to you, Zach. Is Tennessee winning this one? Is Tennessee going to beat Georgia, Zach?
I think it's going to be a close game. Like I said, I think both of these teams are pretty good when they're playing at their best. And for that reason, the game is in Athens. It's just hard for me to pick Tennessee to win this game just because, Tennessee's a better team than Arkansas, right? And they still went to Arkansas and didn't play well and lost that game. Georgia's better than Arkansas. And, Nico's got a little more experience now. He's played on the road a couple times. He hasn't played on the road, in a month, though. So it has been a little while since he's been in that situation. Since that Arkansas game. It's tough for me to pick Tennessee in this, just based on the history and based on what we've seen from Josh Heupel teams on the road and the penalties that they've struggled with. Ultimately, I think penalties could kill some drives and prevent you from scoring points. And Georgia's just able to capitalize on that and score more than you. I don't think it'll be a high scoring game. I think Georgia wins something like 20-17.
20-17. That would be brutal, but definitely not, that is not out of line with what I think is in the realm of possibility for sure.
Hopefully Kirby Smart's watching this too. So just so he knows, I'm picking.
You picked Georgia to win. You cannot say.
Yeah, no one's doubting you. Kirby.
Exactly. Kirby, he's behind the scenes telling his team, nobody picked us to win. We're literally a 10-point favorite in Las Vegas, but not a single person has said that Georgia can even win. Georgia won't even sniff a win in this game. I'm sure that is what he's telling. And he's calling all of his players idiots, apparently.
Oh, well, not the ones that get arrested, just the ones that see an old friend.
That's right. That's right. If you see an old friend and you smile after a football game, total idiot.
And stupid. He said the word stupid.
That's true. So stupid is what he followed it up with. But yes, if you get crazy traffic violations driving like 200 miles an hour, hey, kids make mistakes, But if you are watching, jump into the comments and give us your prediction if you want to. A few people have already. Jamie says 28-25 Tennessee. There was another one down here. Chris says 31-17. Oh my gosh, if Tennessee could go in and actually run it up on Georgia. Again, that's another one. Out of the realm of possibility? I don't think so. Because if your defense keeps Georgia under 20, and you land a few of those big shots, you're right there. Terrence says that's the same prediction as mine, 31-17. Monty says 20-7. God, that would be an incredible performance by the defense. Dustin says 27-16. Vols. Pick 6 by Boo Carter in the fourth quarter. Don't get me started. That would be so incredible. Billy Bob says 24-22 in a close one. How am I feeling about this game? Tennessee, as I've already been saying, has a road to victory here, and it doesn't have to be perfect. I think, and I'll say this. This prediction is assuming Nico plays. And in my personal, again, my conspiracy theory is that he actually just had mild symptoms and they made the call at the half after talking to a doctor or something. And he probably is going to be okay by Saturday is my speculation and my assumption in this prediction. So let's say Nico plays in this one. I think it will just go similar to the Alabama game. It's back and forth. It's really tough. It's super physical. And Nico is going to have to make plays with his legs, and a couple of those shots are going to have to land. I mean, that is exactly what happened against Alabama. A couple of the shots landed. Dylan Sampson had a great game, and you scored enough to beat these boys. That's what you want to see out of Nico in this one. And then when it comes to the defense, I think it is possible that Carson Beck clicks it all back into place. And in my Tennessee fan brain, that's what will happen. Except in my prediction here, genuinely my prediction, I don't think that's what's going to happen in reality. Like I said, my Tennessee fan brain, that's what's about to happen. In reality, I don't think that's what's about to happen. I think he'll be better than this Ole Miss game. I think he will be. He was so bad in that game. I think he's a little bit better, and they score a little bit more. But here's the thing. In 2016, the last time Tennessee beat Georgia, the previous game for Georgia was a home loss to the Ole Miss Rebels. And I think the same thing is going to happen this year. Is going to be just as close. I'm going to go 24-21, Tennessee. They pull it out on the back of heroics by, take your pick, Sampson, Thornton, Nico, somebody, and as some commenters said there, maybe a pick 6, maybe just a big interception, giving the offense short fields. Carson Beck, again, probably better, but still not great. I mean, they only scored 18 against Ole Miss. I'll give them 21. And Tennessee outlasts them with a field goal by the great Max Gilbert is what I'll say. I chose Tennessee to beat Alabama.
And I chose Tennessee to lose to Alabama. So maybe it's the same vibes this week. I'm picking Georgia. You're picking Tennessee. Maybe it'll work out the same way.
I flopped around a lot. I was listening to Andy Staples and Ari Wasserman earlier today. Ari picked Tennessee in this one, and I was surprised. I was like, oh, man, there's somebody out there that actually picked Tennessee.
Yeah, Kirby
and it's
probably
not just a homer.
To do that.
That's true. Oh, that's right. He probably is a plant so that Kirby could berate his team. Leslie says Tennessee 35, Georgia 21. Kevin says special teams have to play well to win. Tennessee 23-21. God, that would be a great game. That means you're probably at some point down 21-20, maybe, and then you come from behind and win. Is that all of them? I think. Oh, no, here, Evan. 14-13 Vols, and says 30-13. God, I hope that it is that good. He said, don't forget they let Mississippi State score 31 in Athens, and Beck is a bum. From your mouth to God's ears. I hope that's what happens in this game so badly. So there you go. We're on the record. Tennessee win for me. Georgia win for Zach because he hates Tennessee. Wow, what a negative.
I'm just trying to do the Lord's work here and do all I can to help Tennessee pull this out.
A true negative Nelly.
Yeah.
All right, let's finish with this. Oh, here's another Jarrett says 42-21. I like, God, that would be a serious blowout.
Can you imagine Tennessee fans on Twitter for the next month if that happens? I mean, and nobody deserves it more. There's nobody worse on social media than, and I don't like to generalize entire fan bases, but sometimes it's just easy. And Georgia fans are by far the worst fans I've ever seen on social media. I know of plenty of Georgia fans in real life, and they're fine, right? Like most people, it's fine. They're just fans of a team. But the ones that get on Twitter, my goodness, they are everywhere, and they are incredibly annoying, and it is.
And they think
brutal.
about Tennessee all day long.
Yes, all they do is search tweet. Like there's people that Georgia fans that follow me, and I'm certain of this because I will tweet something, nothing really even to do with Georgia, and they're immediately responding. Like the only way you're doing that is you've got this set up on a tweet alert to respond. Like that's part of your daily routine. It's bizarre. So if it does happen, if they do win by 20, I don't care if they win by 1 point. Tennessee fans, go have at it. Like do your victory laps for the rest of November. I don't care.
The way that I will dance on Georgia's grave will be unlike anything we have ever seen.
I'm sure. I'm
so happy.
I've no doubt it'll be some of your best work.
Because I mean, it's just been like it's been the one thorn in the side. Tennessee national championship in baseball. Georgia sucks at basketball. Football. Let's get these guys, please. All right, let's finish just with this super quick. Couple of things in basketball. One, while we were talking here, Zach, we have a history of big recruits coming in during our show for Tennessee. The Lady Vols get Denia Prowl, the number 6 overall recruit in the class of 2025. 5-star small forward commits to Kim's Lady Vols. Really nice pickup, and they look like a pretty serious team right now.
Yeah, you can already tell the offensive approach under Caldwell is exactly what Danny White described it as. They're scoring points, and she's serious. There's a great article, kind of a profile piece on ESPN about Caldwell last week, I think. If you find that online, it's really worth reading. Kind of gives you a lot of insight into her approach as a coach and just kind of what she's all about. And she don't mess around. She's
very exciting.
She's there to win, and she's there to do more than just win. Like you can tell, she wants to do something special, and it means a lot to her to be at this program with the history that this program has, thanks to Pat Summitt.
And I hope it does finally get back to glory. It's been way too long. But at the same time, Rick Barnes and the boys went to Louisville and laid the wood in a really impressive performance. I was squirrely about it going in because just that first game, the defense against Gardner-Webb wasn't really there, and it kind of spooked me a little bit. I was like, what are we, defense against Gardner-Webb? I think it turns out it might have just been an opponent thing. They were just, let's roll the ball out there and we'll beat Gardner-Webb, which was true. They ended up winning that game by like 30. But against Louisville, who they're in complete tear-down rebuild mode, but I think they're going to be far better than they have been in the last few years. Which isn't saying much. They barely won any games at all the last few years.
They got a super energetic coach.
They do, and I like that guy a lot. And they went all out for that game. It was a whiteout, and it was sold out, and it was a big. I mean, it was. Everybody always says, "Oh, this was Tennessee Super Bowl." This was kind of Louisville Super Bowl. Not to degrade them at all. I mean, it's a very proud basketball program, but they were very, very hyped for it. And Tennessee just bullied them straight up. I think Akpara was pretty impressive. It might be a struggle to get him to score all that much, but I think he's an exciting player. Gainey looks better at 2 guard. Zakai, absolute dog, even though he had 11 turnovers in that game, which was not great. He needs to get that put back together, whatever happened there. But he just had a dagger 3 near the end. I think Louisville pulled it back to within like 10, 12 points. And he made like a 30-footer just right in their face and ended it essentially. It was a ton of fun. And I think Chaz Lanier, is he going to be Dalton Connect? No, he's a really exciting player. 19 points, can create his own shot. I like what I saw out of Rick Barnes' team. Not sure they'll be as good as last year, but the potential's there if they can gel, if they can put everything together. That would be it'll be a fun year. I think it's gonna be a fun year.
Yeah, I like the addition of Akpara. I think that makes all the difference. I think that if this team, yeah, I like that. If this team ends up going deep and making a run or being better than last season, whatever the case, I think that's going to be a main reason why. Like, you lose Dalton Connect, you hope Chaz Lanier can fill that to some extent, like you just said. I think having that defensive presence, that makes all the difference. You look at a lot of good championship teams at all levels. You got that guy, right, that does the stuff that nobody else can really do or wants to do, playing tough defense, getting those rebounds, your Ben Wallace, Dennis Rodman type guys. Still be that guy. Score a few points when Tennessee needs you to, but just still be a force on defense. I think that's huge. And I think, and just combined with the way Rick Barnes coaches defense to begin with, you're going to be pretty good defensively, or at least your efforts are going to be pretty good. You throw that in there to defend against some of these big guys, which was a weakness for Tennessee last season. I think, man, that could really be a difference maker.
I think so. Some fun games coming up for them. I think they play Virginia in the Bahamas tournament next week or the week after. So some exciting basketball coming up over Thanksgiving, and there's always just a ton of b-ball if you're a basketball head like myself. So that's it. That's the show. Charlie Burris, Zach Reagan, A to Z Sports Big Orange Podcast. Thank you to everybody who tuned in. Here's a good note to end on. Ernie says it's going to be 20-17 Tennessee over Georgia. Ernie, you said it. We're manifesting this. Tennessee win. This is happening. Josh Heupel will shed the can't win in a primetime spot monkey off of his back in this one. It's happening, Zach. But seriously, thank you to everybody who commented. Could not do this show without you. As I always say, we genuinely couldn't. Thank you for watching, commenting, hanging out. You know where to find us. Subscribe, yada, yada. All of those things. All righty, and we will talk to y'all next week.
See you guys later.